We are very grateful that he is willing to address us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Terry Pratchett.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, do excuse me if I look at my notes more often than is normally polite, but with my condition, the letters sort of dance under my eyes, and I have to catch the little buggers as they go past. I'm here today because you asked me to come. I'm not a liberal, a socialist. I'm not a Tory. My politics have always been against the government. I was raised as a journalist from a young age, and you know how it is. You go off to the Trades and Labour meeting and you come out a member of the Primrose League, and then you go off to the Tory Garden Party and you come out a member of the Supreme Soviet. You should always be against those in charge. You invited me here not because I've written 43 best-selling books in the past 25 years, but because I'm a man who stood up and said, I've got Alzheimer's. I'd prefer to be the other guy, honestly. In fact, I have a rare variant of classical Alzheimer's, known as posterior cortical atrophy, which pummels the brain in a slightly different way. It leaves me possible to the detriment, I hope, of the long-term future of the disease, capable of speaking out. We are facing, to use the term used to me by a worldwide expert on PCA and other dementia diseases, a tsunami. I am just a little wave ahead of the mass. Technically, I'm early onset, but growing older behind me are the baby boomers, made fit and strong by the first generation, made fit and strong as the first generation to grow up in those days anyway, in the beneficent arms of the National Health Service. All those injections, the cod liver oil, the orange juice, and for a while at least, the school milk made us big and strong. It was cradled to grave care, although I do seem to be seeing things that suggest that some people now believe it might be better termed cradle to not useful enough to live. Woody Allen famously said, "I don't mind dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens." I would like to be there when it happens, in fact, at least until the morphine is called for. I'd like to know the faces around me. I'd like to know who I am. I'd like to know my own name, and I assume you all feel pretty much the same. By the year, they are moving again, 2025, there will be over 1 million sufferers here as the cohorts of the first post-war generation take their chances in the Alzheimer's lottery. 1 in 14 of them, that means you, will lose. So, in a way, will their spouse, if they're lucky enough to have one. And that's an interesting case too. There will be more need for that unsung army who saved the state £6 billion a year. I couldn't believe that one. I had to go and check it. They may be a diminishing resource, given the less traditional family structure in recent decades. Even without their unsung and unrewarded help, the diseases cost the unrewarded. They're moving. Help. The disease will cost cost society, if we still have one, around 35 billion in 20 years' time. I hate these statistics. I'd like to keep this human, so I will say this. The toll of this nasty disease is greater than you think. The risks are greater, the costs are higher, and an appreciable number of people, even in this room, will be affected by it. In fact, it seems to affect every single family in the land, to judge by the people I speak to. People laugh about it, but there is an element of fear. I laugh about it. My disease means I can play hunt the slipper all by myself. And it's okay to laugh, but there is an edge of fear because we hate getting old. Our society is based on the fear of aging. Look at the men you see outside. They're wearing their children's clothes. They don't grow beards like we used to in Victorian times to look older. They shave their heads so that they never go bald. That means you're still a boy, you see. Dementia is not a disease of the bumbling, troublesome elderly. People get it in their 50s and their 60s. I was diagnosed at 59. 60 is supposed to be the new 40, so you can definitely assume a certain tetchiness on my part. Certainly you are more at risk with age, but it is no more a natural part of aging than is cancer, and the latter, I have to say, is more flush with support and research. Alzheimer's appears to be seen as a social problem rather than a medical one, which is why carers are so starved of help. A cancer patient, let's face it, is a brave battler. A dementia patient is thought in some quarters to be a superfluous old fart. It can strike anyone and does. Lifestyle choices may or may not help. I suspect at best they change the odds, and there is no cure. Researchers are optimistic that something that, while not a cure, might allow us, something that, while not being a cure, might allow us to lead a more normal life is possible. If they were not optimistic, they would not be researchers. All I will say is that I hope it will be soon. And then, of course, I hope that when it comes, we can actually afford it. At the moment, the National Health Service finds it impossible to give the only palliative treatment that does exist to all Alzheimer's patients at a cost of £2.50 a day. This is not a scenario designed by me to scare you, although it certainly scares the hell out of me. This is what is going to happen. These are the cold equations. If the disease is not stopped or slowed, then the country will have to deal with a large population of helpless elderly, and politicians will have to deal with their carers who, having grown up in the same generation, do not perhaps have the same forbearance and stoicism of their forebears. Someone, and it may be people here, will have to make some big decisions. Is there going to be a government of any stripe in England willing to put its money where its mouth is and fund changes? Or will dementia, they're moving again, remain the most feared disease of the over 55s? They fear the underfunded home, the loss of dignity and self, and all too often, I'm still afraid to say, the chemical kosh. Let me tell you a little something from personal experience about this disease. I know one fellow sufferer who has told her doctor that if she contracts cancer, then she wants the pain to be killed, but not the cancer, preferring that to the end game of the Alzheimer's sufferer. From where I sit, barely affected as yet, it appears to me like a slow-motion car crash, almost balletic, as small things break and buckle and drop away, and little losses mount up. And what is always at the back of your mind is that sooner or later you will go through the windscreen.